lawyers in Sandy Hook lawsuit spar over meaning of an online broadcast. Austin, Tex. In the more than 5 years since a mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School, the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones has used his Infowars media operation to spread false theories that the massacre was a hoax staged by the government in an effort to tighten restrictions over firearms. That is not in dispute. But in a courtroom hearing here, lawyers for the parents of a child killed at Sandy Hook, in Newtown, Connecticut, where 20 first-graders and 6 adults were shot and killed in December 2012, and lawyers for Mr. Jones argued on Wednesday over whether he was maligning the family or the mainstream news media in an April 2017 broadcast titled, "Sandy Hook Vampires Exposed." The families of 9 Sandy Hook victims, including that of Noah Posner, who was 6 when he was killed, have filed cases against Mr. Jones, whose operation is based in Austin. The hearing Wednesday was the first in 3 defamation cases to reach a courtroom. Among the thornier questions it raises, does speaking publicly about the killing of a child turn the child's parents into public figures, making it more difficult to win their case? The broadcast is central to the case brought by Noah's parents, Veronique De La Rosa and Leonard Posner, because it aired within Texas' 1-year statute of limitations for defamation cases, and because it features, their lawyer said, a crucial, false theme spread by Mr. Jones, that the shooting was staged, and the parents were lying about it. Followers of Mr. Jones who believe those false claims have stalked and harassed the Posner family, forcing them to live in hiding. Mr. Jones is seeking to have the case dismissed under the Texas Citizens Participation Act, which protects citizens' right to free speech against plaintiffs who aim to silence them through costly litigation. Lawyers for both sides continued to file documents hours before the hearing began. Judge Scott Jenkins of the District Court of Travis County, who had not had access to the latest filings before the hearing, instructed both sides to reach an agreement that the record was complete. Once it is, he will have 30 days to dismiss the case or allow it to go forward. In his remarks, Mr. Jones's lawyer, Mark Enoch, said that he was unfamiliar with Mr. Jones and his Infowars programming before he was hired to represent him. But, Mr. Enoch said, his client's bizarre, incendiary claims were exactly the type of fringe speech that the First Amendment seeks to protect. This is not about Sandy Hook, Mr. Enoch said, adding that Mr. Jones was sorry for the Posner family's loss and acknowledges the death of their child. In April 2017, according to court documents, Mr. Jones aired a clip of Ms. De La Rosa's interview with Anderson Cooper of CNN after the shooting. Mr. Jones notes that when Mr. Cooper turns his head, his nose disappears repeatedly because the green screen isn't set right, implying that the interview was not filmed near the scene of the shooting, but was staged in a studio. Mr. Enoch played a half-hour montage of news and movie clips, which Mr. Jones said suggested examples of lies by CNN, the federal government and politicians. Displaying a narrow series of quotes from the hours-long original broadcast on poster board, Mr. Enoch said those remarks by Mr. Jones did not defame Ms. De La Rosa. Instead, he said, Mr. Jones was criticizing lies by the mainstream news media, the vampires who were part of the Sandy Hook plot, accusations that were Mr. Jones's opinion, not fact, and therefore largely protected under the First Amendment. Mr. Enoch also argued that Mr. Posner and Ms. De La Rosa became public figures when they spoke out in favor of a ban on assault-style weapons like the rifle used to kill their son. To win a defamation case, public figures must prove actual malice, meaning that Mr. Jones knew that the statements were untrue and broadcast them anyway, or that he demonstrated reckless disregard as to their accuracy. The lawyer for Mr. Posner and Ms. De La Rosa, Mark Bankston, firearms, argued that the
That is not
excerpts
in
from the
dispute.
April
But in a
2017
courtroom
broadcast
hearing here,
chosen by
lawyers
Mr.
for the
Enoch did
parents
not
of a
include
child
multiple
killed at Sandy
monstrous
Hook
false
in
statements that
Newtown,
Mr. Jones
Connecticut,
presented
where
as
21st
fact, like
graders
the
and
false
6
claim that
adults
the
were
parents
shot
were
and
actors
killed
in a
December
government plot.
2012.
Mr.
And lawyers
Bankston
for
said
Mr.
Mr. Jones's
argued on
remarks
Wednesday
about Ms.
over whether he was
DeLarose's
maligning the
CNN
family
interview
or the
fit into a
mainstream
pattern.
news media
Over
in an
5
April
years, according to
2017
court
broadcast
filings,
titled,
Mr.
Sandy
Jones
Hook
repeatedly
Vampires
used the segment
Exposed.
as a basis
The
for false
families of
claims that
9
the
Sandy
shooting was
Hook
staged.
victims, including
Judge
that of
Jenkins noted that it's a very interesting question of law as to whether one can be an involuntary public figure by dint of suffering a tragedy and publicly speaking about it.